Welcome to the deep dive. We have an incredibly dense stack of notes to get through today. Our mission is to explore a completely different framework for understanding the most important connections in your life.
Yeah, we are taking a really comprehensive look at the empathy intensive couples therapy method. This was created by Figs O'Sullivan.
Right, licensed marriage and family therapist, LMFT number 79062, for those keeping track.
Exactly. And it really is a paradigm shifting approach. I mean, we aren't just looking at minor tweaks to standard relationship counseling here.
No, not at all.
This is a fundamental challenge to how we typically try to heal our closest bonds.
To kick things off, let's think about a scenario that is, probably universally relatable for anyone listening. Have you ever tried to communicate your way out of a relationship problem, only to find that you and your partner are just talking in circles?
Oh, the endless loop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You use all the correct therapist-approved I feel statements, you try active listening, but
But
something...
how an hour later, you are both exponentially more frustrated than when you started.
Yes. Okay, let's unpack this, because there is a radical idea at the center of this source material. And that idea is that most traditional couple therapy is actually built on quicksand or thin air.
That is the core mismatch we are looking at. Traditional couples therapy methods focus primarily on nonviolent communication or cognitive behavioral adjustments. It tries to find a cognitive solution to a problem that doesn't actually live in the cognitive part of the brain.
Right. It assumes that if we simply use our neocortex to learn better communication skills, we can just fix the relationship.
But a relationship conflict is a limbic system problem. It is rooted in deep, primitive emotional survival instincts. You simply cannot neocortex your way out of a limbic system alarm.
Which makes sense in theory, but I mean, when you were in the heat of the moment arguing about finances or who is doing more housework, it feels completely cognitive.
Oh, absolutely.
You feel like you are arguing about cold, hard facts. So today, we are going to look at why that is a total illusion. We'll explore the structural flaw of what's called the weekly session trap.
And the mathematical shift of moving to intensive therapy instead.
Exactly. And how a deeply experiential method boasts an 86% success rate. We will get into some really vivid concepts too, like orphan cheetahs, emotional tornadoes, and the journey from being fighting tigers to herding field mice.
To grasp that transformation, we first have to understand the mechanical limitation of the standard therapy model, the 1-hour weekly session.
Right, the traditional 50 minutes.
Think about the structure of that environment. You sit on a couch and start unpacking deeply painful, triggering issues. If one partner's nervous system gets overwhelmed and they shut down, or if they get highly reactive, the session effectively stalls.
And then the clock runs out. The session is over.
Exactly.
You are sent back into the wild with all those raw nerves completely exposed. I mean, a lifetime of conflict, of one person pushing and the other pulling away. It doesn't just pause because you managed to have a decent hour on a Tuesday afternoon.
It definitely doesn't.
You drive home in tense silence, and you wait a whole week to try again.
What's fascinating here is the underlying science of why those nerves are so raw in the first place. We all know the basics of attachment theory.
Right, that infants require a bonded caregiver to survive.
Exactly. If a baby isn't bonded, it perishes. But what is crucial for adults to understand is that this biological alarm system never actually goes away. Love is not just a romance novel concept.
It's biological.
Yes, it is a primary biological survival need from the cradle to the grave.
So the stakes of a seemingly mundane argument are actually life and death to the nervous system. When your partner turns away or goes quiet or raises their voice, your brain doesn't just casually observe the change in tone and think, huh, that's interesting.
No, your amygdala and hypothalamus light up immediately. They flood your organism with the message that you are under active threat.
Because a threat to the bond is a literal threat to your survival.
Exactly. And when both partner survival alarms are blaring simultaneously, you get a dynamic that the source material brilliantly describes as a tornado.
The tornado metaphor is so good. It's a localized weather system that destroys everything in its path, and it leaves both of you standing in the rubble asking what just happened.
And the key here is that the tornado isn't created by one person acting badly. It is born entirely in the interaction between the two of you.
When that alarm goes off, people usually retreat to one of two places, the penthouse or the basement.
Right, the pursuer and the withdrawer.
Yeah, the pursuer lives in the penthouse. They have high energy, they demand connection, they want visibility, and they are essentially shouting down the stairs to get a response.
While the withdrawer lives in the basement, they retreat, they contain themselves, and they just try to stay safe from the storm raging above.
For anyone listening who recognizes themselves in either that penthouse or the basement, here is a massive revelation, maybe the most vital realization of this entire method. Neither person is the problem.
Your partner is not the problem, and you are not the problem.
The system between you is the problem. Your respective nervous systems are just blindly executing old survival strategies that happen to clash violently.
So if cognitive talking won't fix a limbic survival clash, and a 1-hour weekly session just triggers the alarm without resolving it, we have to look at the intensive model.
Right, changing the math completely.
Exactly. An intensive therapy engagement completely changes the math. Instead of this exhausting cycle of building a tiny bit of safety, losing it during the week, and trying to rebuild it next Tuesday, you gain sustained momentum.
These intensives range anywhere from 1 to 5 days. It's usually broken down into a 2-hour morning session and a 2-hour evening session.
And the goal is to build a highly secure container, a room with a floor, a ceiling, and walls.
It's a space where no one can fall through the floor, run out through the sides, or fly off past the ceiling.
Because your day-to-day relationship out in the real world isn't a safe enough container to do deep limbic work. You need uninterrupted time to stay with the pain and actually get through to the other side.
Weekly sessions keep you trapped in your intellect, safely analyzing the problem from a distance. But an intensive forces you out of your head and into your body, into the felt physical experience of the disconnection. So what does this all mean in practice? How do you actually heal that limbic alarm system once you are inside that secure container?
It requires achieving what the empathy method calls empathy squared.
Empathy squared. Let's look closely at what this means mechanically.
It is not just one person listening and saying, "Oh, I understand why you were sad." It is a simultaneous, two-way, shared limbic experience.
It's the exact moment where both partners realize at the exact same time, oh wow, look at how we are both hurting in this disconnection.
Right. It's a shared realization.
Let's ground that in a hypothetical for the listener. Imagine a couple stuck in a cycle where one works late constantly and the other feels abandoned and gets angry.
A very common dynamic.
The cognitive approach is negotiating work hours or practicing "I feel ignored when you work late" statements. But empathy squared is totally different.
It is the moment the partner who works late truly feels the isolation of the other, while the angry partner simultaneously feels the intense fear of inadequacy that is driving the overworking.
When that shared dual realization happens, it physically uplevels the brain. It literally downregulates the nervous system.
The limbic alarm just shuts off because the brain registers that it is no longer alone in the wild, it is seen and connected.
But to guide a couple to that precise point of empathy squared, that requires a very specific kind of facilitation. This method is built on the foundation of emotionally focused therapy, or EFT.
EFT is a heavily researched clinical map focused on adult attachment and emotional bonding cycles. It provides the GPS coordinates for where a couple is stuck.
But knowing the map is very different from driving the terrain.
Exactly. Which is how Figs O'Sullivan views his role. He doesn't operate as a passive clinician sitting back with a clipboard taking notes on your communication style.
He views himself as an artist and a craftsperson. He pulls on every ounce of energy in the room using colorful words, exaggerations, stories, and physical movement to get the couple to live inside the emotion.
He believes a great therapist has to create living, breathing experiences in the room. And there is a very visceral metaphor used in the sources to describe this process.
Oh, the orphan cheetahs.
Yes. For some people, connecting emotionally is as easy as eating a piece of cake. But other people are like orphan cheetahs who have no idea how to survive. They need to be taught how to eat.
You can't just hand an orphan cheetah a fork and give them a lecture on nutrition. The therapist has to get down on their hands and knees in the dirt, get messy, and physically show them how to consume the nourishment in front of them.
The therapist has to model the vulnerability. And a significant part of providing that lived experience is the co-therapy model.
Right. Figs often works with his partner, Teale.
They aren't just colleagues operating in a hierarchy. They are partners and parents. Together, they provide proof of work right in front of the clients.
They model the actual work of belonging. They don't pretend to have a perfect, trigger-free relationship. If a moment of tension arises between them during a session, they process it live.
The space that exists between the two therapists becomes a living, breathing example for the clients to step into.
That level of transparency is rare, but it makes total sense when you look at their origin story. They openly describe themselves as two rejected, abandoned, messed up little kids from broken homes.
Every relationship they had tried prior to this work had failed.
Fig's personal backstory is a really stark example of this. In his 20s, he was a stockbroker by day and a bartender by night.
He was an anxious guy performing a version of worth for the world. He was using alcohol and fleeting intimacy to escape his own feelings of deep unworthiness.
And he realized that using sex and intimacy as an escape was like eating M&Ms for dinner.
Yeah, it gives you a brief sugar rush, but it provides zero actual nourishment, and you eventually find yourself starving.
The turning point for him was at age 33, moving to the Eastland Retreat Center in California to find some baseline internal stability. But the real defining moment happened at age 40.
He was walking on Ocean Beach in San Francisco, and he had to turn to his mother and admit that he just couldn't make relationships work.
He told her he would never be able to give her a grandchild.
Admitting total relational failure is devastating, especially for someone who desperately wanted a family. But that exact pain is what forms the core of the wounded healer archetype.
He was a wounded healer. He had to do his own grueling personal work first, which allows him to genuinely empathize with the desperate couples in front of him. He's been in that exact same trench.
And the environment where this healing takes place is also far from a traditional clinic.
These intensives frequently happen in Hawaii. And the tropical setting isn't just for a nice vacation photo. The environment acts as a catalyst for the therapy itself.
Couples arrive carrying the frantic, heavy stress of their mainland lives. But the land, the weather, and specifically the ocean, they begin to strip that armor away.
The text notes that the ocean functions almost as a co-therapist. It absolutely refuses to let you stay in your intellectual defenses. It demands something real from you.
You cannot hide, you can't negotiate with a wave, and you can't pretend you are perfectly fine when you are getting tossed around in the surf.
It holds you and threatens you simultaneously, which perfectly mirrors the vulnerability of the intensive emotional work. It strips away the pretense, giving the work a really high probability of success.
Here's where it gets really interesting. How does this intensive process actually unfold over those multiple days?
It is highly structured. This isn't a loose, free-flowing conversation.
It is a bespoke map. Before they even step foot in the room, couples complete separate assessments to generate a personalized relationship system report.
This maps out their emotional entity before the clock even starts. Once they are in the secure container, the process moves through 4 distinct, heavily facilitated stages.
Stage 1 is map your system. This isn't about listing your partner's faults. It is about owning your specific steps in the dance, witnessing your dynamic from a bird's eye view.
Exactly. You leave this stage finally able to own your specific moves, whether that's retreating to the basement or shouting from the penthouse, without blaming the other person for making you do it.
Which is the necessary groundwork for Stage 2, unlock empathy squared.
This is where that shared limbic downregulation we discussed earlier actually happens.
The defensive postures physically relax in the room. This is where the heavy lifting of repairing past injuries occurs. Partners learn to relax their defenses and give and receive genuine empathy.
Then comes stage 3, soften and heal. Because the container is finally safe, the therapist can engage with each partner's most profound vulnerabilities.
This stage addresses the terrifying fear of reaching out. For many, taking in and accepting love is much harder than giving it.
This stage is about feeling that deep vulnerability and learning how to let the nourishment in.
And finally, Stage 4, stick the landing.
Because healing in a bubble in Hawaii is wonderful, but it has to survive the mainland.
This is the integration phase. The couple rewrites their love story for the future, building a practical framework to repeat that safety for the rest of their lives.
The ultimate transformation across those 4 stages is described in the text so perfectly. Couples walk through the door looking like 2 tigers fighting each other to the death.
Claws out, fighting for survival.
But through this experiential process, they stop fighting and realize they're actually just 2 little hurting field mice.
It's a complete shift in dimensional awareness. They go from a 2D to a 3D koi fish out of Waterworld, seeing how they co-create their own pain.
The clinical data supporting this is robust, too. 86% of couples show significant improvement.
And what is perhaps more critical is the longevity. 75% of couples maintain those gains 2 years later.
Those numbers are compelling, but it is entirely normal to have fears. A common one is, what if my partner doesn't want to come?
Dragging a resistant spouse into deep emotional work sounds daunting.
But the text notes that the emotional withdrawers, the ones living in the basement who are very frequently men, they actually progress the fastest, once they feel the safety of the container.
And as they humorously point out, nobody has ever died in a first session.
The financial investment is another reality to consider. These intensives are expensive. FIGs might be the most expensive therapist around.
But the cost has to be weighed against the alternative.
It's a hell of a lot cheaper than a divorce.
The quality of your bond with your primary partner is the #1 ingredient to a happy life.
Which brings us directly back to you, listening right now. Whether you feel like you are standing on the brink of divorce or you just want to deepen your bond, the overarching message is one of profound relief.
You are not fundamentally broken. Your partner is not the enemy.
The survival system operating between you is the problem. And the goal of this isn't endless therapy. The goal is graduation.
Leaving with an internalized method to reconnect for the rest of your life.
The ultimate post-intensive homework acts as a golden rule. It's incredibly simple. Be kind to yourself and each other. And if you fail, be kind to yourself and each other and begin again.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this raises an important question. If our deepest relationship conflicts are actually just our nervous systems perfectly executing ancient childhood survival strategies, what happens when we finally realize that the emotional fortress we built to keep ourselves safe as kids is the exact same structure keeping us starved of love as adults? How do you convince your own body that it's finally safe to lower the drawbridge?
That is a phenomenal question to carry with you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We hope it shifted your perspective. Stay curious, keep exploring, and we will catch you next time.